Hello, everybody. Welcome to Raising Vibrations with Simon today. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at Uranus direct, and we're going to be looking at Mars entering Taurus. And we're going to talk about the transits that are taking place essentially between the 6th of January and the 21st of January, kind of just highlighting some of the things that I think could be useful and important to pay some attention to. And along the road, kind of weaving a story for us to see how the celestial spheres provide us with some interesting information about how consciousness is filtered, at least through our very terrestrial lens. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to do quickly is just let you know that on this video there are timestamps, and so if you would like to listen to a specific part of this content and I'll label it, you'll see that there's timestamps. It's on the YouTube timeline. So when you use the little timeline to scroll from 0 minutes to 20 minutes or from 0 minutes to 5 minutes, etc., there are some timestamps. So just let you know that exists, and you can kind of use that to navigate. So the things I want to do today is I want to tell you a little bit about the astrology school and the Saturn course. I'm going to be talking about the content, so in other words, the actual chart itself, and talking about, just essentially Mars and Taurus. And then I've got some grounding tools or some practices that we could use while Mars enters Taurus, right, Earth sign. And then right at the end, if you're sticking around, I'd like to share some of my personal views on how I see astrology. A very small little segment, but I felt it would be a great way to begin developing a relationship to you from how I see the astrology. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, isn't that what you do in the videos? And I was like, yes, that's true. But I felt that there was an extra piece that maybe I wanted to share that maybe is clear to you guys. I don't know. But for me, I wanted to just share how I look at it and what the potential is, and how you can actually use astrology, especially in today's world, to get deeper in yourself, right? Really, really get deeper into the memory of yourself and what essentially has been occurring for you. And so, yeah. Okay. So again, just want to start off with the astrology school. Essentially, why I'm sharing this is because if you are interested or have found a desire to want to sharpen your astrology language tools, if you want to understand archetypes from a very intuitive perspective, if you find yourself wanting to try to read charts from an EA point of view, then I've gone ahead and I've created an astrology school that is literally designed to take somebody from the I don't know what astrology is to being able to look at a birth chart and say, oh, okay, that's a node. That's what nodes represent. This is what Mars does. And along the journey of becoming more conscious of how astrology can open you up to deeper layers of yourself, the astrology school is designed for that. And it starts off with something all the way from right at the beginning to just the archetypes, all the way to actually client and astrologer relationship, or how to recognize and work with samskaras as an example, right? Has soul wounding. And it's self-study, and you can interact with it the way that you want. If you feel that you just want to learn about the nodes, then there's just a section on how to learn about the nodes. So there's different ways that you can access and develop and enhance your astrology practice using this astrology school. And of course, there is an actual student group where I have somebody called David Casey, who is responsible for creating threads, and he puts threads out and he says, hey, we're going to look at Pluto, we're going to look at nodes, so you can actually apply the material as well. And there are a few other people like Monica Bravo as an example. There's a few other people in there that are studying astrology at a very intense level as well, that are always there to support. So it's a great place to also develop support and to feel that you're a part of a community that is also wanting to learn EA. Okay. So astrology school, and I'll post the links in the description as well as at the end of this video as well. And I'm just going to let you guys know of all these things. So when you feel that you are ready to do things like this, like interact with content that I create that is purposely designed to help us during this time to process, to get a better understanding of astrology. That is what I'm going to let you know. Okay, so let's talk about Uranus direct, and let's talk about Mars entering Taurus. Now, when you look at the chart, which I'll bring up soon, you'll see that Uranus and Mars, of course, will be in Taurus, and you'll notice that Jupiter and Saturn and eventually Mercury will enter Aquarius. So we're looking at Aquarius and Taurus in terms of the archetypes, the signs that these planets will in. And what you're also seeing here, of course, is the Mars-Uranus archetype, sorry, the planetary energies. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of just really ground these two signs, okay? In essence, Taurus is the fundamental principle within each genome that says, in order to exist, I must survive. In order to survive, I need to find a way to thrive. I need to be able to understand what my essential needs are in my environment. And this is across the board of every single living organism that exists on this plane. It has a principle in it that says, this is the mechanism that allows me to survive. That is the archetype of Taurus. So when we translate that into the human experience, what we're looking at here is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we're looking at the baseline. Now, the joke at the moment, which I think is kind of funny, is that in 2000s and 2010 onwards, Maslow's hierarchy of needs evolved, right? Classic Aquarius energy, from the bottom line not being just your most primal needs, like for instance, water, food, shelter, but Wi-Fi. It's now Wi-Fi is at the bottom, right? You need that fundamental thing in order to survive in our world. But you understand the point now, right? Imagine if you needed to do a couple of things that required online presence, and you had no internet connection, right? You wouldn't be able to meet that need, and it would feel very kind of disabling to you. Again, taking out of context, I'm not talking about actively living off grid and not using technology. I'm talking about living in a world that we live in today where you do need to interact with some form of technology and you don't have internet connection, right? That fundamental need is necessary. And so Taurus points to that essential need for us, right? So to become an opera singer, to be a painter, to follow your astrology practice, to listen to this video, etc. We all need a fundamental food need, or the essence of food, etc., or our ability to have shelter, income, etc. And Taurus, as you know, with Mars and Uranus, or Uranus moving through there at the moment, we've all through 2020 to certain degrees been interacting with that edge. You know, for those of you that are listening to this video and that you've had your job put on the line because of COVID, the impact of COVID as an example, then that is a direct experience of Uranus or Taurus. It's everybody to a certain degree in different ways has essentially been brought to a point of understanding where they are on the resource line. And depending on where you are is a sense to a certain degree influencing your psychological state of feeling actually secure and safe, and if you can survive, right? So the Aquarius archetype, or the Aquarius sign, speaks to our relationship to changing patterns, okay? So when a pattern changes, Uranus, or the archetype of Aquarius, would essentially be, for lack of a better way of describing it, an influence or a reflector in this place, right? Capricorn says, here's the boundary, here's the structure, here's the rule, don't break it. Aquarius says, no, we want to transform that by changing the boundary, altering the structural state, and so on. So Uranus's role is to essentially show us where the pattern wants to be decentralized. It wants to change, okay? And you'll see that through, you'll see that over the next few years. And I talked about this in the the Saturn and Jupiter and Aquarius video, where you will start to notice that the way that currency exists within our world will be different. It will fundamentally change. And whether that's something that's a conscious interaction from man, or if it's something that's more at an energetic impulse that we're responding to, you know, who knows? But ultimately, at the end of the day, there is going to be a change fundamentally in the structural nature of how we are able to meet our essential needs. And so this is what energy is about. It is the initiation of these seeds into our collective awareness, in which it will become the frontline news and part of your awareness that will be everywhere, and you'll see it in different ways and in different states. It doesn't take on one form. It will be different ways and different forms to which this energy will be coming into our awareness, and we'll either innovate from the experience, which is what I want to encourage, or you'll find yourself being overwhelmed by the experience and then being kind of almost in a way on the receiving end of this transit, which is feeling like your survival is at the end of the line. And, what are you supposed to do? And that's a really terrible place to be, in the way that it can really be frightening, because at the end of the day, if your survival is on the line, that's not a place where the first thing you're thinking about is how many yoga poses you can do in a day. It is, I want to fundamentally live, right? So it's really intense. So this energy at the moment, while it appears maybe in some way, shape, or form to look like a glamorous thing, from my point of view, there are beautiful things that can come out of this energy, but there are also aspects of this transit that we do need to be respectful for. And that is how we're going to deal with the awareness of how our values within society are changing. Will change more progressively with this energy. You will notice that through this energy, that the resources and how we interplay with resources, and our trauma that is related to how we have had resources available to us or not, those things are going to come out as well. And so this energy is really going to bring to the surface a lot of material that we will collectively share. And for those of you that might feel this is not to scare you, okay? I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to put fear into yourself. It's not a kind of like COVID thing where people are going to be like it was at a point where everybody's starving. I don't mean it like that. I just mean that this energy will reveal to us where the undercurrent of our sensitivity is within our collective and individual awareness, and where we stand in the currency line, essentially. Okay, so that's what I mean. All right. This is a profound opportunity for deep psychological and emotional transformation and tremendous amount of healing in terms of embodiment. And that's what I want to focus on today, at least with the energy. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the actual astrology of this time. Okay, so as you can see, we have the natal chart wheel up at the moment. And because the solar fire is super diligent and professional, it gives us the 6th of January 2021, not Simon 6th of January 2020. Okay, all right. First thing that I want to point out, of course, is that Mars is sitting at 29 degrees of Aries. And it's significant because we've just been experiencing the Mars-Pluto square, right? Remember the third Mars-Pluto square? And in the previous video, I talked about this energy as, you think about it, whenever you're looking at Mars and Pluto in a person's birth chart, or you're thinking about it, how it manifests energetically in us, think about a tension in a tectonic plate. Okay, so where there is tension, right, where there's pressure on something, and eventually that pressure will cave. And there will be energetic shifts where there is strong crystallized earth or strong resistance. There's pressure in that resistance to the point where that resistance can't hold it anymore, and then something changes. So Mars-Pluto creates an energetic tension in our lives that forces us to break a crystallized pattern. And through that crystallized pattern, we move through something that eventually liberates us. It doesn't feel like that sometimes, especially when raw emotions come to the surface and our body gets shaken up by the experience. Okay, so Mars-Pluto, third Mars-Pluto square, we've been having this Mars transit through Aries, as you know, for a long period of time. So we are essentially, like I talked about in the full moon in Cancer video, we are at the end of a completion cycle related to Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn. And as you can see, there's a lot of energy, like especially with those two planets at the moment that are in Aquarius, that are causing things to shift for us. So this energy at the moment is pushing the narrative for something to change in your life, to move ahead with something that feels very restrictive. And you'll also notice in terms, especially like in the UK, for example, you can see that there's a lot of more there's a lot more COVID restrictions coming in place in terms of lockdown and stuff. So that's where that energy can also feel like that pressure on a lot of people to now be in situations where that pressure is pushing on something that needs to change, right? And the more we hold on to it, the more we're going to feel caged in that way. So that energy is trying to push us into a new direction, right? And if you've been doing your work when Saturn and Jupiter is moving through Capricorn, you'll feel this energy actually moving you subtly and very powerfully in a completely new direction. Okay, like we're being slowly shifted into a new direction for ourselves. Okay, so that's that over there. And again, that square is taking place. Now, as you know, Mars is at the end degree, which means that it's also going to be squaring Saturn, and it's going to be squaring, well, it is squaring Jupiter at the moment, but it's what is called a first quarter square. Okay, and this first quarter square is, again, very similar to how it describes Pluto and Mars. It is essentially that we're moving in a new direction, but we're a little bit unsure about how that direction develops. And so we're kind of moving one step forward and then not getting a lot of reassurance from our environment because A, it's never been done before. B, there's nobody that's actually telling you which way to go. So we kind of take a step backwards and we say, oh, is this really what I should do? And then we kind of move forward again. So it's this tango between 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And eventually when Mars actually crosses Uranus there, we will then have a completed first quarter square, and the energy will be less 2 forwards, 1 step back. It will be more along the lines of 2 steps forward, half a step, nope, 2 steps forward, half a step, and then 2 steps forward kind of thing, right? I apologize for your ears at that point. Okay, so you can see it's already initiating something there, okay? All right. So also interestingly, Moon is currently squaring Mercury at the moment and Pluto. So as you're listening to this video on the 7th of January, the Moon will probably be around here, just at the end degrees of, actually it will be in Scorpio if I'm not mistaken, because I looked at the chart again for the next day. But yes, so moving through Libra, naturally, if it moves through Libra, it naturally squares all the stuff in Capricorn as well. So the Moon is also illuminating to us a shift in direction relative to what we are relating to, right? Libra, relations, okay? As I said, Venus at the end degree of Sag as well. Okay, so let's move over to the 7th of January. And what we have here now is the official ingress of Mars into Taurus. As you can see there now, Mars is now officially left Aries. And oh my gosh, we can all just say, thanks very much, Mars, for your time that you spent in Aries since September last year. I'm glad now that you have gone along your road and found another planet, because we are ready for a different change, right? So wonderfully so, if I can even describe things like that, all right? Look at where the Moon is. It's in opposition to it. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, guys, right? The Moon now moves into Scorpio and opposes Mars and Uranus. Now, the reason why I'm saying you can't make this stuff up and the relevance of it is, A, look, the Moon is now squaring Saturn. It was squaring Pluto at the time when Mars was in Aries. It's now squaring Saturn, Jupiter, and it's also making contact to that. So it's illuminating the fact that this energy is coming. We will feel it at a lunar level, right? There's an initiation pattern that will come in here regarding this, that we'll feel the change, right? Mars will officially leave that period of energy. So not only does Mars spend 3 or 4 months in its own sign and does a whole retrograde thing and squares Pluto 3 times, by the time it actually leaves, the Moon goes, hey, wait up for me. I'll come over there and make an opposition to you, and also square the planets that you are having a very deep conversation with your buddy Uranus. So the Moon comes along and reflects that, which I think is pretty neat, to be honest, and continues the T-square that's taking place between the two. The only difference now is that they're all in fixed signs, as opposed to what was in Libra, which is a cardinal, Capricorn a cardinal, and Aries was a cardinal, even though those planets were also squaring it. Do you see it? So it's shifted from cardinal energy to fixed energy. And when something shifts from cardinal, which is change, to fixed, it goes change. No, hold on. We really want to commit to this road. So there's a commitment that wants to take place right now. So what are you going to commit to on the 7th of Jan? Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the next planetary phase that I think is important to pay attention to. And of course, this is the 9th of January. And what we're going to be looking at here is Venus entering Capricorn. So Venus leaves the fiery signs of Sag and it enters the earthy, yep, that's the word I just used, earthy signs of Capricorn. Okay. And to me, this is interesting because the planetary ruler of Mars and Uranus is Venus, and Venus is now an Earth sign along with Mars. So both relationship pattern energies, Mars and Venus, are in Earth energy. So slow down, grounding. And that was what I want to point to at the end of this conversation today, is the importance of actually slowing down, okay? Really coming back to the body, because this energy over here, this Aquarius energy, it is not the type of energy that likes to keep things very consistent. It's erratic and all over the place and bouncy, and 1 minute's doing this and next minute's doing that, and then it's like this and then it's like that. So to have Earth energy when these transits, especially Mercury entering Aquarius, is good. I think it's supportive in a very big way. So Venus enters Capricorn, and it leads into the Mars Uranus aspect being conditioned by Venus, which is, again, we are essentially understanding deep psychological and emotional patterns of definitions in ourselves, right? So remember, I talked about Aquarius being about the pattern changer, right? To decentralize, to destabilize. So this energy wants to decentralize and destabilize patterns of energy that are not supportive, and routines. So what types of routines do you have? What types of definitions do you have? What types of beliefs do you have that no longer work for you, no longer serve for you? And this will all be deeply related to your ability to understand resources, to understand abundance, to understand where your own essential needs are, how you meet those needs, how those needs are becoming more individualistic as opposed to something that is more collective. Okay. How can you feel very comfortable asserting a boundary in place and not feeling guilty? Because when we have put boundaries in place in the past, generally speaking, we've always tried to accommodate for the other person's emotional dysregulation relative to their attachment trauma. And so as a natural default, we have sometimes repressed what was real for us and what our instincts were telling us, because we didn't want to upset the other party. And so we are having a shared responsibility as opposed to encouraging people to work with their own pain, to work with their own sadness, with their own dysregulation, and so essentially through doing the opposite of what Capricorn wants to instinctually do, which is to just hold everybody in a safe place and say, oh, I'll carry all of your pain for you and be a little bit upset with you sometimes in a passive aggressive way because I really didn't want to hold your pain, but I'm doing it because I care for you, kind of thing. Right? That's what we've done in the past to a certain degree as a culture, as a society. We've just been entrained in that. It's nobody's fault. It's just how we've dealt with the feminine and our struggles towards understanding what it's really about. We don't like the darkness. And this is, again, what this energy is about. We're going into our darkness again. The difference here when it was in Capricorn was we were stuck in that place and we were consumed by our own wounds and our own emotional issues that we didn't have the capacity to objectify it, right? And that was the purpose of doing Eva Core's charts in the previous video. It was not so much of what this person did as much as how she overcame her own trials and tribulations inside of herself, and how when she was enmeshed in her own trauma, she was essentially creating her own psychological invalidation. In other words, she essentially turned around and said, how could people see the meaning in my work, and then all of a sudden, just because it's not part of the trend anymore, it's disappearing, and yet I'm still here. And then she realized that it was her own pain inside of herself that wasn't, she was externalizing it. She wanted other people to recognize it as opposed to seeing what it was for her. Right? What is your pain telling you about your personal journey? That was the contact with Karen there as well, right? The wounded healer even though when I say that, I don't actually mean it the same way that everybody else might read it on the internet. Okay. So coming back to this Capricorn energy, decentralizing, changing the pattern, leading off into a new individual self states, and beginning to essentially look at your own pain and be able to hold it for yourself and not ask other people to hold it for you. And we've all been there, including me. Okay. So the 11th of January, I think, is a really good day to look at. Because we have, there we go. Oops, one back. There we go. This is the 11th of Jan. So here we have, again, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. Mercury is now between Jupiter and Saturn. Mercury is squaring Uranus, right? And I put it down over here, Mercury squaring Uranus. Now, whenever Mercury and Uranus make contact to each other, the way you've got to see it is like this. Mercury is the subconscious, Uranus is the subconscious memory, and Mercury is the capacity to remember the information in the moment, or how you would experience memory that you would have had over the last, like, say, 3 or 4 hours, as an example. Now, another cool way to actually see Uranus and Mercury in the chart from a biological perspective is Mercury will correlate to how the nerves are able to, they're called synapses, right? So when you take your hand, like, so you can take your hand, you can actually do this experiment, take your hand and tell your hand to, or tell your fingers to raise the index finger. Okay. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, look, my index finger's moving after me telling it what to do. How is that happening? Right? You're instructing your brain to send signals down to your hand to do the action that you've been conditioned to do. So Mercury is the capacity for that information to go all the way from your brain to your hand. Okay. It's the neural network. Uranus is the memory that is associated with the conditioning relative to that experience. And so what we're doing here is we're looking at far-term memory of how the body was conditioned through experiences, and Mercury, the capacity to access the synapses in the brain and to be able to have that translated, right? So this Mercury-Uranus aspect in the chart will bring to us a mental anxiety, because what would happen is you would become more consciously aware of where your brain and your mind is disassociated, where you could be splitting off because there could be some unresolved trauma in your body. B, this energy is also bringing a lot of insight to the table, and the insight is supporting us in being able to break conditioned patterns. So Venus enters Capricorn, as you know, Mercury's in Aquarius, and so there are potentials for insights and awakenings to occur to change the pattern, so psychological and emotional transformation can take place. All right. And so that Mercury flirting around with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction over there, again, is bringing to us not only social conditioning that we have assimilated into our physical body's memory, but also, again, how that would exist in our awareness. And it is also bringing a message from the Aquarius realm into the Saturnian Jupiter realm of our beliefs and ideas. And it's trying to create a revolution. It's trying to decentralize our thinking and to bring new insights and new patterns of understanding to us. Okay, so this is a really great time to be able to tap into that energy. Okay, so the 11th, I mean, it essentially starts when Mercury enters Aquarius, but I would say that this is the heightened period when that Mercury-Uranus energy comes along. And so, yeah, write down some notes. You probably will struggle to sleep a little bit when this transit takes place, if you're very sensitive to it, especially if you've got transiting Uranus in your 12th house. Because again, this energy works in hyperspace, so you're probably going to be more sensitive to picking up information from the quantum realm, downloading it into your body, and then a message comes through and says, hey, be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, processing stuff that you didn't even know that was existing there, as an example. Okay. So yeah, write some stuff down. If you get lots of insights, take your phone, record something on your phone, use this opportunity to really access that more unconscious realm. Okay. All right. So then it leads us to the 12th and the 13th. Now on Solar Fire, it is going to do something really funny where it's going to say, hey, on the 12th of January at 12:37 in Sweden, The moon will not actually be conjuncting the sun. So I suspect that later on in the evening, I'll be doing a video, of course, for this. Later on in my evening, the moon and the sun will conjunct and will create a new moon experience that will just be before Pluto. And so, yeah, we'll have a new moon in Capricorn on the 12th and 13th of January. And what that means to me, just, very, very simply, is in essence the closure. It's like there is an illumination in our awareness that is pointing to quite a few things that I've said. That the patterns that have come up until this point in time in your life that no longer can move forward with you will feel heavy, and you need to begin to unpack those things. You need to ask yourself, is it really important that I carry this pain with me anymore? What is the purpose of it? And so on and so. Okay, that's one. Two, this energy is also talking to the capacity for us to rewrite and rewire how we have defined our world. And so we'll have a lot of experiences that are going to change over the next month in regards to how we have defined our essential needs, what we consider to be valuable, a strong relationship to getting really in touch with your own inner self, right? These things are also going to come up for yourself. So don't be surprised that post this new moon in Capricorn that you start to notice yourself wanting to make new decisions in your life and new choices and new goals, right? That are going to be important. Now, when I say goals, I don't mean it in a sense of like, oh, I want to become this. It's more along the lines of, here's what I'd like to be disciplined at in terms of developing and strengthening a certain behavior mechanism or a certain trauma that I have, and here's a coping mechanism that I can put in place that prevents me from feeling affected by the outside environment, so I become more emotionally resilient. I mean, that's pretty much the key word here, right? So we're all kind of practicing emotional resilience with this energy. Okay, so there are a lot more things to say about it, but that's in the context of this chart. That's what I'm pointing to. All right. Okay. So as you know, you can see that the sun is sitting on that Pluto over there. So there's a closure aspect that is also associated with this, right? So we're talking about the closure of Saturn's transit through Aquarius, Jupiter's transit through, sorry, not closure of Saturn through Aquarius, but Saturn through Capricorn. We're ending off that Capricorn cycle and we're moving into the sphere that is Aquarius. So to me, that is what it is. It's finally letting go of that process. And of course, it is also closing up the full moon, which is in Cancer. As you know, I talked about closure as well, finding closure in things, processing deep psychological and emotional memory in the soul. Okay. So let's move to the 14th of January. And as you can see, Uranus has got a little S next to it for Simon because it's super important. No, the S stands for stationary and it says stationary direct. So Uranus is going direct in the 14th. Mars is just in a closer phase to it. So that's significant for me because I think that you've got Uranus just about to go direct, or not just about to go direct, it is essentially moving direct in its motion. But Mars is kind of just on the back end over there saying, not ready, guys, not ready yet, it's not ready yet. Why? Because we need this moon square to take place over there. Moon needs to go over, it's gone over all of that over there right now. So the moon carries a message of all of that information. So structure, 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 liberation, 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 right? And then, oh, look, Uranus in Taurus, about to present to us an entirely new 6-month cycle of evolutionary change regarding the way that we come into our bodies, the way that we have experienced the values in society, what we now value, all of these threads that I've talked about at length in different videos at different points in time, including this one. Okay, so initiation, like I said right in the beginning of this video, initiation of those Taurus themes. Okay. And then we move to the 19th of January. And here we have, of course, the conjunction between Mars and Uranus. They're sitting over there. And the sun is at 29 degrees of Capricorn as well. So to me, again, really, really interesting to see that pattern show up for us. The sun is going to leave Capricorn finally, and it's going to move into Aquarius, where it will begin to square Uranus and Mars. And again, whenever you see the squares, what we're dealing with is resistance that has pressure on it that eventually will cave, and so a new direction will emerge. And so again, the theme is consistently showing up as changes psychologically and emotionally taking place for us in our own personal lives, but also how that will then begin to represent itself and manifest itself in our collective world. Okay. So new changes taking place over there. I also want to point to the fact that Mercury is now at 17 degrees of Aquarius and Jupiter is at 7. And so we have a new phase relationship between Mercury and Jupiter. Now, again, when we talked about Uranus and Mercury, we talked about somatic memory and memory within our long-term field, okay? And then we have the way that that information is translated in the moment through Mercury, right? The messengers. Now, when we look at Jupiter, what we are looking at is the way that information is logically processed, Mercury, how we gather information, and then how we then sit with that information and it develops and what's the word? Like it develops, it nurtures, it sits, it composts, and eventually we get an aha moment, right? That comes from an intuitive space. So Jupiter and Mercury correlates to how we will take insights that are coming from the Uranian realm. They will come through the abstract right brain, and then they will come through into the left brain for logical communication, right? Just like I'm doing right now. So I'd access the Uranian field. I would then connect to it intuitively using astrology, and then I'd use Mercury to language that. So Mercury in a new phase to Jupiter indicates a new cycle, a new seed of collective and individual awareness related to the Mars and Uranus aspect. And again, not a coincidence that Moon will be in Aries going, hey, by the way, guys, new direction. So we're all being initiated into the Saturn-Jupiter cycle. We're all being initiated into the subconscious and subterranean energy shifts that are taking place within our individual and social sphere. And you'll see this become more progressively aware as we get on the 19th of January. And for those of you that are into human design, you'll know that when the sun enters Aquarius, we have the new year, or the Rave New Year, right? Gate 41. And so for any of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I highly encourage you go and check out what hexagram 41 represents in the I Ching. I Ching has got some amazing wisdom in it. Not some, it is an amazing wisdom tool. And for those of you that don't know human design, I encourage you after this video to go and type in Jovian Archive and put in your human design, your birth details, and go and learn about human design as well. Okay. All right. So now that this transit is done, we're going to look finally at the 21st of January. And this is where we're going to end today in terms of the chart analysis. So 21st, you see Mars now is a new phase to Uranus. The moon crosses all of that saying, okay, guys, I'm ready to now usher you into the new direction. And it's very clear that we have the sun entering Aquarius at the same time. Come on, you can't make this stuff up, right? I mean, so fascinating to me. And this is the 21st of January is, this is where are you going now? What are you cutting away that no longer works for you anymore? And what is the new direction that you're going to start taking your time and attention to and begin moving it into and nourishing your resources and your individual space in that sense, okay? All right. So now that we have completed that, I want to talk about some grounding tools. I'm going to put in the description a link to a PDF that's just called some tools that you can use to ground yourself. Exercises that you can do. So that I encourage you to go check out if you want to, some grounding tools. Please also at the same time be aware that breathing is a profound tool to be able to access somatic body. We're coming back into the body. We're really feeling the body. We're really being able to access the body at a deeper level. So breathing exercises are really important. There's one particular breathing exercise that I really enjoy from this person called Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist, and he was talking about an ability to really just access somatically our body in the moments if we're stressed or if we're ungrounded or if we're not connected to ourselves. So what you would do essentially is you take 2 short breaths, inhaling like and then you hold it for a second, and then you breathe out using your diaphragm, of course, for as long as possible, just really, really, really coming back down to the body, and just allowing yourself to really sink into your body. And then, as an encouragement, grounding technique, grounding tool, feel your feet. If you're sitting down, for instance, right? How are you sitting down? Feeling your body, paying attention to your body, paying attention to where your feet are, and do this about 50 times a day. And just to really start to get some body awareness of yourself as well, especially for men who have experienced a lot of trauma. They're very disassociated from their feelings, and we're very intellectually top heavy. And I want to be coming back out into the body and practicing this. And this is the tools that are very important for Taurus, because Taurus is grounding. Okay. So yes. Now, I wanted to share personally, just in terms of astrology itself. And what I wanted to say was, when you're looking at this chart, and especially the type of energy that we have at the moment, and that's what triggered it off, right? I like to see the chart as like a time traveling machine, where it's not able to actually take us to the time where, say, Leonardo da Vinci was drawing or connecting to the Vesuvian Man, or when Michelangelo was painting the Sistine Chapel, etc. But it's not like that, although you can access it to a certain degree in that way. You look at transits, but it's a time traveling machine. And what it does is, when you see it in this way, it allows us to, through transits and through being able to change the dates, etc., to emotionally relate back to a point in our life that we may have not been able to fully process or understand. So when looking at your charts, just for a moment, just kind of see, and I know that we do this to a certain degree, but to really actually feel the magic of the ability to use this tool as a portal into your own evolutionary and psychological journey, and to use that as an opportunity to really look back at the things that have shaped you and understand that where you are today, A, is to a certain degree influenced primarily by that, but B, that it's not just a random occurrence that you're doing these things, right? There are patterns that if you looked throughout your life, you would notice that there are certain patterns that have led you to certain things, certain psychological and emotional changes, and patterns would have shifted in your life, things would have occurred in your life, and sometimes we don't have full access to that information, and that's sometimes that's on purpose, but in a sense we have this time traveling tool, and through the ability to use our emotions to access, and sometimes we cannot, of course, but access points in space where we can really get to process the deep memory of the soul. And so in a way, if we see astrology through this lens, we can not only have it reflect back to us what is actually occurring in us, not that the astrology is changing, because ultimately it's just symbols on a chart, but really what it is that you use to interact with it. And so in a way, there's this potential to be able to see this in ourselves and to interact with it in a way that truly allows us to access more dimensions that we may have not been open to before. And so it's kind of very Aquarius-esque expression. And to be able to see ourselves as an opportunity to do deep memory processing. So I just wanted to share with you what additional thoughts on that as well, because I'm noticing within myself and within a lot of people around me that there are profound opportunities to really access these things. And, it would be a shame to kind of just see it through this lens of, hey, astrology is tropical or sidereal, or, yeah, fair enough. There are multiple ways to see things, but ultimately at the end of the day, what is it really telling you? What are you really actually doing? Is it another way to intellectually spar, or is it a way to actually get into the dimensions of your own soul and your own depths, and to really process your pain, or to really see what is occurring in your life? Is it a distraction that keeps you in a mental sphere, or is it a capacity to really anchor you into deeper layers of your own emotional self? Okay. All right, so everybody, thanks so much for sitting with me for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed the content. Please write your comments in, write what you like about it, and so on and so forth, what insights you got, share what you want. Don't forget the astrology school link if you're wanting to study astrology and that you're really wanting to harness your skills or get some support regarding a community, be able to have access to tools that can develop and strengthen your capacity to read charts in that way. And yeah, all right. Have an amazing day. Bye.